Hey guys, welcome to the How to Improve Your Onboarding, where I'll show you best practices and successful patterns. My name is Lenny, and I am the lead designer and the co-founder at Yes Insights. So before we can talk about how to improve your onboarding, I want to briefly go over what is onboarding. Now, I know most of you are product or design people, so you already have an idea about what onboarding is. But for those who aren't familiar, I just want to briefly go over this, right? Onboarding is pretty simple. It's a process that takes a new user who doesn't know what he or she is doing all the way to an activated user who is super excited about your product. A good onboarding experience will shorten this learning curve. Now, if you're familiar with Dave McClure's pirate metrics, that's a simple funnel that goes from acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. Onboarding, most onboarding experiences usually fall in activation and retention. Now, you can also argue that onboarding should also help revenue and referral, but most onboarding experiences tend to focus on the learning curve. So that usually happens in activation and retention. So I want to give you a quick example of a good onboarding experience. This is Facebook. It's probably the most popular app in the world. So I personally visit Facebook at least once a day. It's pretty cool to see what my friends are doing, and my news feed is pretty busy. However, to get to this state, there's a lot of things I have to do. All right, I have to add a profile picture. I have to add information about myself, and I have to find friends or make myself able to be found by friends. If I just sign up for Facebook and I don't do any of this, I end up with a news feed that looks like this, and this is really sad. Now, if you signed up and you saw this, you probably wouldn't stick around, which is why Facebook helps you out with the onboarding experience that tells you to find your friends, tells you to fill out your info, and it gets you to add a profile pic so people can find you. So then when you actually get into the main app and you get friend requests or you see news in your news feed, you get that aha moment and you understand what Facebook is about. Now, there are thousands of products, including your own, and if you analyze the onboarding experience for all of these products, there are really three primary buckets they fall into. These are the buckets, right? Doing, showing, and explaining. And this has a hierarchy to it where do is better than show and show is better than explain. This concept was originally coined by Scott Bolesky, I believe, of Benchmark Capital. It's a very simple concept and I like it very much. So let me give you a brief overview of what this is about. So onboarding experiences that explain things to the users are the most challenging. Right? Think of a good example is Adobe Photoshop, where it's a super powerful tool, but new users sign up and they download the app and they have no idea how to use it. They have to look at help documents, they have to do Google searches, right? Very challenging. One step better than explaining your product to a user is showing your product to the user. For this, think of tooltip walkthroughs or product tours that tell you step by step, right? This is what you do in the product. This is what you should do. These patterns are getting more popular as there's lots of tools that help you do this without roping in your developers. Now, one step better than showing your product is proactively doing things for your users so they're set up for success. A good example of this is MailChimp that a lot of people use to send their newsletters out. To send a newsletter out, you need an email template, and MailChimp provides you with dozens of them. So before you've even written anything, you already have a template that's set up, and you can easily plug in your pictures and change your text. Now, I want to go into each one of these in more detail and show you examples from across the web, right? Starting with explain. Best example of a product that gets explained to users is is Adobe Photoshop. Once again, new users, once they download the app, they get into this workspace, and it's super confusing. Right? There is basically no onboarding for Adobe Photoshop. Now, some users will see the help menu, and if you click that and you do a search, you get thrown into Adobe's Workspace Basics, Adobe support site on the web. Now, I bet nobody actually reads this. I've used Photoshop in the past, and let me tell you, I've never used this before. What I do, the way I learned Photoshop, is not through Adobe. It's actually through Google. I do a Google search on Photoshop tips or how to use Photoshop. Another way people like to learn Photoshop also isn't through Adobe. It's through third-party Adobe classes. This class, Intro to Adobe Photoshop, is a 3-hour class that teaches you only the basics. Yeah, so Adobe Photoshop is a very difficult product to get started with. Another good example of a product that gets explained to users is Google Analytics. So if you have any sort of web presence at all, you're probably familiar with Google Analytics. And that's the problem. Google Analytics is a very powerful tool that solves a lot of problems for a lot of users. Generally speaking, if you have a product like that, it's impossible to build a good onboarding experience because everyone has a different problem, and it's very difficult to have an onboarding experience for a specific type of user without alienating other types of users. So yeah, let's dig in. Let's see what Adobe Photoshop. What Google Analytics does. Let's see how they onboard you, right? So after you install your JavaScript tracking code on your website, Google Analytics throws you into this 5-step, educational tour with a lot of text and a lot of videos. It teaches you things like intro to audience analysis. Personally, I've used Google Analytics for several products, or like half a dozen different products, and I don't think I've ever actually watched any of these videos. The way I learn it, like Photoshop, I do a Google search. Right? I use Google's other product to help me use Google Analytics. So, quick recap: explaining your product to a user during onboarding. This only works if the user is very motivated. All right, most apps, if the user isn't very motivated, people are going to give up. Right? This sort of pattern is used by products with too many use cases. Products that are really, really powerful. And if you don't have one of those products, don't use this as a primary method. Explaining things to users is great. It's a great supplement to a good onboarding experience, not as a primary method. All right, moving on. Showing your product to a user. All right, this is one step better than explaining. One pattern, this is what designers call a overlay. All right, so this app is give me 1 second here. Sorry. All right, so this app is the Morningstar stock app. And this is the first screen you see when you first get the app, right? There's a dozen items on the screen, and it tells you what each part of the UI is for. Honestly speaking, this really sucks, all right? Because look, there's 10 different items on here, and no one's going to read this. Even if you do read it, you're not going to remember what this is all about when it comes time to actually use it. I would never recommend anybody to use an overlay pattern. Okay. One step better than an overlay pattern is a product tour. This is a pretty standard pattern, especially among mobile apps, where the first time you download an app, you see a series of slides that explains to you what the app is about, or explains features to you. All right. This is better than a screen overlay because it only shows you one thing at a time, so the information here is much more digestible. However, you do have to be careful because most of the times people will skip it. Look, if you look at this particular example, there's Look at the dots on the bottom of the screen, right? There's what, like 9 dots? Look, no one's really gonna read through all 9 slides. Most people are gonna skip it and jump into the app, right? So because of this, be careful to never put any information in there that users must rely on, because they're not gonna see it. Chances are they're not gonna see it. All right, one step better than a product tour is a tooltip walkthrough. This is better because, look, it's contextual. This tooltip walkthrough is attached to a particular part of the UI, so it tells you, hey, this walkthrough is appropriate for this, right? So you have a better context. Another example is from a tooltip walkthrough from an app that I previously built called Relay. And this tooltip walkthrough is shown after the user has taken a primary action for the first time. Right? They take a primary action for the first time, then this tooltip walkthrough with, I think, 3 or 4 steps appears and shows you, different parts of the UI. So here's the funny thing. I actually tested this UI without this tooltip walkthrough, and guess what? Turns out I really didn't need it. Users were able to figure out how to use the app even without the walkthrough. However, it just took a little bit more effort than I expected, which is why we stuck with the walkthrough. So that brings me to a point with tooltip walkthroughs. Tooltip walkthroughs are not used to fix bad UIs. They're used to assist good ones. If your UX or UI sucks, don't use a tooltip walkthrough to fix it. All right? Don't patch it up. Fix your UX UI. All right? So final point here. This is an example. So this app that you're seeing right now is Polar. It's an iOS app designed by Luke W., who also coined the term just-in-time education. What just-in-time education means is you teach your users how to use a specific feature or a gesture only when it's useful to them, only when they can perform that action immediately. So in Polar's example, there's a swipe left gesture to skip a poll, but they don't show you that until you've used the app, use all the basic functions in the app already, and you understand the app. So look, what the heck? In 1 second. So if they were to show you this swipe left interaction at the very beginning, it would be meaningless to you because you haven't had the time to get the context of what the app is about. All right, so quick recap, all right? Showing your product to your user during onboarding, all right? Don't expect your users to read everything, all right? People are gonna skip it. Because of that, don't put any critical information in there, all right? If you do use it, be as contextual as possible, and also keep in mind that tooltip walkthroughs and these product tours, they don't fix bad UX UI, they assist good ones. Again, if your UX UI is not good, fix that instead. Fix the root problem. All right, last bucket is doing things proactively for your user. Right? This is the best way to onboard people. All right, let me show you some patterns. MailChimp, great example. All right, you're using MailChimp to send newsletters out. What do you need to send a newsletter out? Templates. Right? So MailChimp supplies you with a dozen different templates that are, work really well, and you can click one of these and start putting in pictures and text. Really easy to do. Now, what happens when you click it? You get into the email editor, and guess what you see? You actually see a tooltip walkthrough here. It tells you to drag any of the blocks into the campaign, and teaches you how to use the interface. Once you perform this action, MailChimp shows you a second tooltip walkthrough. It teaches you how to use the image. Now, this is great. So one, MailChimp proactively provides templates for you. And once you're using the template, they also show you how to use it. And not only that, these tooltip walkthroughs, they don't just sequentially show up and you press next. They you only get to the next tooltip in sequence after you've performed the particular action. So this works really well. Basecamp is another example of proactively doing things for a user. So new users who get into Basecamp, they see a bunch of sample Basecamps that they can play around and explore. So they can see how a real Basecamp would look if it were run by a real team. However, if this, looking at sample Basecamps, if that isn't your cup of tea, if you prefer to watch a product video, you can also do that. There's a 2-minute, Basecamp tour on the left. And my last example is my favorite. It's from Squarespace. Squarespace actually uses all 3 patterns from all 3 buckets in their onboarding experience. So let me dig into what they do. Okay. So Squarespace, once you get started, you start by picking a template out. And once you've picked a template out, Squarespace puts you through this 4-step wizard that asks you a series of questions like who this site is for, what do you do, and what industry you're in, questions like that. You finish this quick wizard, and you get into the main app where the template is already filled in for you. Right? You've already got pictures, you've already got text, so you don't have to imagine how your site works. You don't have to imagine how your site would look like. All you have to do is swap, copy and swap images with your own. Now, once you start doing that, Squarespace actually shows you a animated video of how specifically to put in different blocks in your template. And if that isn't enough, if you're still confused, you can check your inbox and you will see an email with a series of getting started video tutorials. Really cool, really cool, really cool. So what Squarespace does is they set you up with a successful template, they show you how they use the template, and if you're still confused, they explain to you how the app works. All right, so quick recap on doing. Use a sample or a demo like Basecamp. You can use successful templates like MailChimp or Squarespace. And the best onboarding experiences actually uses patterns from all 3 buckets, right, to cover all their bases, like Squarespace. Right? Quick recap on the entire thing. Right? Explaining your product to a user during onboarding is probably the worst type of onboarding experiences, and it's used typically only by products that are super powerful, that do a whole lot, so they can't have a one specific onboarding experience for a specific type of user. Right? That's really bad. Use that as a last resort. Showing products to your users during onboarding is one step better, right? But do keep in mind that people will skip your product tours. They will skip your tooltip walkthroughs. So don't put anything in there that might be critical. All right. Use these walkthroughs and use these tours to assist a UX UI that's already good, not to patch up a bad one. And the best way to onboard your users is doing helpful actions proactively for your user. All right. This is the best way because this requires no action on the part of your user. As soon as they get in your app, it's really easy to get started and they're already set up for success. Do keep in mind that these are just patterns and guidelines, okay? Your particular app, your particular situation might be a bit different, but in general, you have to think of your users. Think about your users and think about the fastest way you can get them to extract value out of your product. If you can do that, you can build a good onboarding experience, and people are going to be very happy, just like these kids over here. So your main goal is to get your users to have a reaction like these kids here. That's when you know you have a good onboarding experience. All right, so great. You have a good onboarding experience, but how do you improve it? You do have to understand that onboarding isn't a static one-off project. It's an ongoing journey for both you and your users. Now, one of the ways you can get feedback to improve your experience, improve your onboarding, is through quantitative feedback, okay? Through analytic apps like Mixpanel or Testmetrics, okay? This is great. This is great because you can see exactly what your users are doing and where they fall off in the funnel. What this doesn't tell you is why this is happening. Why do users fall off? Why did it get stuck on step 3? You don't know. The way you find out is through qualitative feedback. And what that means is you have to observe or talk to people. There's a lot of ways to get qualitative feedback, and I want to go through a couple of the tools that I've used in my previous projects and at Yes Insights as well. One of the tools is Full Story. The Full Story, what it does is it tracks all the actions your users are taking in your app. Like for instance, you can see where your users are clicking, where they're scrolling, where their mouse is. Really cool. They describe it as a DVR for all customer interactions. It's a really cool app. The best thing is your users don't know you're watching them, so they act completely natural, which is really cool. It's just like looking over somebody's shoulders. Now the downside is your users can't talk to you, and you can't talk to your users while they're doing it. So if you want more, if you want to understand why your users are feeling a particular way or why they're clicking a particular spot, there's another solution for that. User testing is another solution. So what user testing is it's a remote usability test. All right. What they do for you is they find they find people who match the persona of your users. And what you can do is then you can assign tasks to these people to perform in your app, and these people will attempt to do these actions and speak out loud as they're doing it. And they'll tell you what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're seeing. Really cool. It's a really cool product, and for sure it'll help you discover pain points about your onboarding and your product in general. Another thing you can do is you can send surveys to your users. So we do that. We actually use Yes Insights, which is our own tool to send surveys to our users. All right. So what we do is day 4 of someone's 7-day trial, we ask them, hey, are you happy with the numbers? Happy with the number of customers who responded to your surveys? You're very happy, you think it's okay, or you're not happy at all. So once again, we do have an admin panel where we can see how many surveys people have made and how many responses people are getting. What we can't see is whether they're happy or not, which is why we send this one-click survey, and people can just respond with one click and then give us feedback. We got a lot of responses from this, and then we discovered that we need to do a better job of educating people, which is why from the feedback we've gotten, we built a resources section on our website. The last tool that I really like is called Intercom. It's a very popular tool that a lot of startups are now using. We primarily use Intercom to do a live chat with our users, but Intercom is also great for sending triggered emails, including your onboarding emails. So if you actually go back to this slide here, this particular email is sent through Intercom. Yeah, so Intercom is great. So here's one example of a use case. This message is actually sent by Intercom to new users of Intercom a couple of days after they signed up. So they ask, like how was integrating? Was it difficult or not? Right. Another use case, this is one of our customers. They attached a one-click survey to their Intercom message. Once again, it's a great way to get qualitative feedback. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully you guys have learned some actionable tips that you can apply to your product and app during this webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Reach me at Lenny at yesinsights.com. And thanks for attending. Bye.